20s over the suburbs. How's the been trying to frame it?
Very warm welcome to Amishakil 5858. I am Ahmed Shackle. Following are the latest news headlines which have been reported by American, European, Canadian, Asian, African and Australian news channels and all other news agencies. So please, let's go to the news.
Tonight, President Trump defending his second-term agenda in an exclusive interview with NBC News. The president downplaying concerns about a possible recession and pressed on his immigration crackdown. Your Secretary of State says everyone who's here, citizens and non-citizens, deserve due process. Do you agree? His stance on the constitutional rights of the people his administration is trying to deport, plus responding to those Trump 2028 hats and the new controversy over this AI-generated Pope picture. New warnings from famed investor Warren Buffett about U.S. trade policies as his surprise announcement he's stepping down from his company marks the end of an era. Frustration and delays at one of the nation's busiest airports. How the air traffic controller shortage means a weekend of travel headaches across the country. A show of support in court after a sheriff's deputy is run down and killed. The suspected driver, the father of a man killed by police just the day before. Was it revenge? A close call in the heart of Israel. A Houthi missile strike coming dangerously close to the Tel Aviv airport. Israel's response tonight.
This is NBC Nightly News with Hallie Jackson.
Tonight, millions are on alert for severe weather as a massive wildfire explodes in signs in North Carolina. President Trump defends his aggressive deportation plan and what he said when asked if everyone is entitled due process. And authorities say they stopped an attack on Lady Gaga's concert hours before it was set to begin. First, that wildfire burning near a popular vacation resort, tripling in size overnight, fueled by strong winds and dry conditions as millions in the South face a new severe weather threat. Damaging winds, hail, and flash flooding all possible. Our weather team times it all out. President Trump refuses to say that migrants are entitled to due process under law despite the Fifth Amendment. The administration blames the courts for halting his efforts to deport migrants to that notorious prison in El Salvador and what he's now saying about a third term. Selena Wang reports from the White House. The rescue off the coast of Miami Beach. First responders from multiple agencies race to rescue dozens after a luxury yacht capsizes, what authorities are now saying. Brazilian police say they thwarted a possible attack targeting more than 2 million people attending a Lady Gaga concert. Israel is vowing to retaliate after a Houthi missile fired from Yemen explodes near Tel Aviv's main airport. The investigation into how it penetrated their sophisticated Iron Dome defense system. The moment a small plane slams into a Southern California neighborhood, killing everyone on board. The new details coming in. Deadly gunfire erupts at a family barbecue in Houston. The latest on that investigation. The final countdown to choose the next pope. Speculation mounts as a short list emerges and how it may all play out. Plus, the growing reaction to the controversial social media post from President Trump. Our team has the latest from Vatican City. And America strong tonight. After an accident made her miss her prom, the medical staff then went to work to save the day.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this.
Let's talk to someone who has a lot of experience talking to young people across the country. Right now, in fact, he's in San Diego seeing big crowds, and he is Turning Point USA founder, Charlie Kirk. Charlie, it's great to see you. You are perhaps the foremost person in the United States with exposure to young people. And if you'll forgive me, Charlie, you might be pushing the edge of still being described as young yourself. I think you're young, but you're talking to people much younger even yet than you, Charlie Kirk. What do you see when you go campus to campus? What do you see when you have these debates? What are you seeing out there in America?
Well, the crowds are incredible, and the support for President Trump is only growing on the front lines. And secondly, Will, they want a message of positivity. They want one of optimism. You look at what the Democrats are talking about. It is increasingly cynical. It is negative. It is drenched in nihilism. And you saw what President Trump, who, by the way, was in exceptional form at the University of Alabama, he was putting forward a positive vision of America. And I just love what you were talking about. What you were talking about is the contrast between what those of us that are conservatives, we have an uplifting message for America, one that is hopeful, one of family formation, one of church attendance going up, one of business ownership, of entrepreneurship. And think about the message of the Democrats. They say your country is racist, your past is terrible, your entire nation is irrelevant and should not really exist in its current form. They say you might die of climate change, and that systemic racism is everywhere. What a depressing worldview. And you contrast that with the Trump agenda of tax cuts and no tax on overtime and no tax on tips and of course for older Americans, no tax on Social Security. We are going to see a optimism, a golden era. When I'm seeing on the front lines young people that finally believe that they can have their share and their shot at the American dream.
I like the description of it as the front lines, Charlie. As you're speaking, we're seeing massive crowds in front of you, for example, at College Station, Texas. I was reading about your events at Turning Point and your interaction with all these young people, Charlie, and you laid out 3 reasons you go to these campuses, 3 reasons you engage in these debates that are viral on TikTok that all of our children have seen. And I loved your 3 reasons. Would you lay that out for us, why you do this, why you debate, why you go to campuses?
Yeah, most importantly, number 1 is to give the conservative students on campus, the Turning Point kids, conviction and understanding that they are not alone, that there's a lot more people on campuses that share these views, that share the conservative worldview. And
on this Sunday night, statehood at stake. The American president ramps up talk of a takeover in Greenland.
Will you talk to him about making Canada a 51st state, annexing Canada?
I'll always talk about that.
And the annexation of Canada ahead of a high-stakes meeting with the Prime Minister. Escalating atrocities in the Middle East. Hamas executes Palestinians as Israel plans to widen its war. Plus, Lytton's new beginning. The BC town back on the map after being decimated by a deadly wildfire. Plus, the unassuming hotel where history was made.
I want it made quite clear, in the Netherlands now, there is only one authority.
And the Canadian general who made it happen.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Sarah McDonald.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, is beginning his first full week in office, facing 2 major hurdles. The first, resetting the Liberal Party's strained relationship with Alberta and the future of Canadian energy. And the second challenge is U.S. President Donald Trump, who once again is not backing down on threats to annex Canada. Carney is expected to meet Trump in Washington on Tuesday. Tonight, the president's saying military force is not on the table, but economic force clearly is.
Today, the Prime Minister returns to Canberra with a mandate after a landslide victory for Labor.
We are deeply humbled by the result on Saturday, and we don't take a second of it for granted.
While the leaderless Liberals begin looking inwards after their devastating loss. The estranged husband of accused murderer Aaron Patterson quizzed over the pair's relationship history. Donald Trump announces a 100% tariff on all movies produced outside the United States. And the winning streak continues. Australian Oscar Piastri claims his 3rd straight win of the Formula One season in Miami. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Catherine Robinson. Hello and welcome to ABC News. I'm Catherine Robinson. The Prime Minister has spoken with US President Donald Trump, describing it as a warm conversation. Anthony Albanese has been unable to have a one-on-one talk with President Trump since he imposed tariffs on all imports. And as Mr Albanese returns to Canberra and prepares to choose a new front bench, Liberal backbenchers are lining up to criticise their party's election campaign. It's decisive. Political reporter Isabel Rowe has more.
Asia Now.
Hello and good afternoon. It's 12 p.m. in Singapore and Hong Kong, 11 a.m. in Jakarta, and 9:30 in New Delhi. I'm Yasmin Yonkers at this hour. Israel vows to respond after a missile fired by Houthi rebels lands near its main airport. Several flights to and from Tel Aviv cancelled for the next few days. Israel says Iran won't escape consequences from the strike. Ahead of a visit to the Middle East next week, U.S. President Donald Trump shuts down speculation of another term, signals possible lowering of tariffs on China, and shrugs off recession fears. And Chinese President Xi Jinping will visit Russia this week to strengthen ties and mark Victory Day. The trip also coincides with a 3-day ceasefire in Ukraine. rebels are threatening fresh strikes to block Israeli airspace after an earlier attack on the country's main international airport. The militant group carried out a missile strike that broke through Israel's air defenses to hit near Tel Aviv's Ben Gurion airport. And Israel blamed a technical failure in its defenses and vowed retaliation that is 7 times stronger.
The biggest names are on France 24. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Hello and a very warm welcome. If you're just joining us, you're watching Daybreak here on France 24. These are our headlines. Far-right anti-EU, a pro-Trump candidate, George Simeon, comes out on top in the first round of Romania's presidential polls. A second-round runoff against a centrist candidate set for May 18th. Yemen's Houthi rebels say US strikes hit the capital Sana'a overnight, the US continuing its campaign against the group. Israel, meanwhile, vowed revenge against Houthis and Iran after a missile hit the airport in Tel Aviv on Sunday. Houthis rebels claimed responsibility for that attack, saying it would not be the last, as Israel once again plans to expand its bombing of Gaza. And offering a warm welcome to researchers and scientists that face restrictions in funding and freedom in the United States, EU leaders launch efforts to lure American scientists across the Atlantic. Glad you could join us. Also coming up, Diptika Lahome will be here with a review of the international papers, a number of articles on the start of the trial against Sean Diddy Combs, the hip-hop mogul, accused of running a sex trafficking ring, of abusing women for 2 decades, and having a network of people using violence to help him cover up by threatening victims and witnesses.
Happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 PM every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great. That's a good point.
He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 PM and 5 AM as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Hannah Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun. No, you didn't say that, Dave.
It's a surprise. I think there's an element of truth to that.
Please join me from 3 PM every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good morning. As the sun is rising over Buckingham Palace, Britain prepares to celebrate 80 years since the end of the Second World War.
V-Day, one of the most significant moments in our country's history. Battlefields fell silent across Europe, and a weary world breathed again.
Hostilities will end officially at 1 minute after midnight tonight, Tuesday, the 8th of May.
Well, today we honour those who made the ultimate sacrifice for our country.
Germany, the enemy, who drove all Europe into war, has been finally overcome.
Victory in Europe Day marked not just the end of the conflict, but the dawn of peace, resilience, and remembrance, a spirit that endures today.
News is live here at Buckingham Palace as we witness 1,300 armed forces personnel marching through central London later, showcasing the very best of British pomp and pageantry.
Well, that includes the much-anticipated flypast, where the Royal Air Force will take to the skies over Buckingham Palace and the Mall.
Ukrainian soldiers are set to join the procession as well, symbolising Britain's commitment to achieving peace on the world stage.
Well, huge crowds rejoiced on the streets after nearly 6 years of war. Today will be live across the country as Britain celebrates.
There's excitement building here on the Mall outside Buckingham Palace as the sun begins to rise, and the very first of the most patriotic Brits gather for what is certainly going to be a very special day indeed. Well,
in other news this morning, counter-terror police foil a suspected plot by Iranian terrorists that was reportedly just hours away from being launched.
Just ahead, the Prime Minister is told to raise taxes and spending in a bid to fight off Nigel Farage's Reform UK.
And sport this morning, 50-year-old Mark Williams begins. He's come back in the final of the World Snooker Championship. He's now trailing 11-6 to China's Xiao Jintong after being 7-1 down in the first session. Chelsea beat, after the Lord Mayor's show, Liverpool in their race for the Champions League. And also Harry Kane. His trophy drought is now over.
It's going to be a dry and sunny bank holiday Monday for many of us, with plenty of sunshine on the cards, although it will be feeling a little bit cooler than it did towards the end of last week. Join me later for the full forecast with all the details.
It has just gone 7 o'clock. I'm Stephen Dixon.
I'm Ellie Costello, and this is a very special VE Day GB News breakfast.
Very good morning to you. 7 o'clock on today's show. From street parties to a military procession, 4 days of celebrations begin today, marking the 80th anniversary of the end of the Second World War in Europe.
And there was a busy afternoon of Premier League football. We'll have the action as Chelsea came out on top against the newly crowned champions, Liverpool.
Plenty to come on Monday, the 5th of May. Prime Minister praises veterans for their selfless dedication as the nation prepares to pay tribute to those still with us today. Last 8 years on, one World War II pilot warns against hesitation to confront aggression in Europe decisively.
The situation is different now, but the dangers are the same.
The trial of the rapper Sean Diddy Combs begins today in New York on charges of racketeering and sex trafficking. Donald Trump calls for the reopening of Alcatraz to lock up America's most ruthless and violent criminals.
And plenty of sport, including Formula One, where Oscar Piastri secured his third race win in a row at the Miami Grand Prix.
Very good morning to you. People across the nation are getting ready to celebrate the 80th anniversary of VE Day and remember the sacrifices made during the Second World War.
Tonight on PBS News Weekend, as 25% tariffs on imported auto parts take effect, what will they do to the prices of new and used cars? Then, the daring American women who flew combat aircraft in the skies over England in the Second World War. And we explore a loneliness crisis that's taking its heaviest toll on young adults.
One of the trickiest things about loneliness is that the lonelier you are, the more negatively you see social situations, and therefore the less likely you are to put yourself in social situations.
Tonight, full speed ahead. President Trump rejects concerns about his trade war and rising prices.
Gasoline is going down. Gasoline is thousands of times more important than a stroll or something.
New tariffs on imported car parts taking effect this weekend, threatening to drive up car costs.
I'm Willie James Zimmerman in West Palm Beach, Florida, as the president is set to meet with Canada's newly elected prime minister and as he casts doubts on due process rights.
Also tonight, rare strike. Yemen's Houthis hit Israel's main airport. As the war in Gaza escalates and the humanitarian crisis deepens. Violent chain of events. An Ohio man is accused of murdering a sheriff's deputy after police shot and killed his son. Tourist trouble. Visits to the USA fall sharply.
I'm Elise Preston in Hollywood, where people from around the world flock to see the stars. But business lately hasn't been as strong.
Plus, conclave countdown.
I'm Chris Lipsey in Rome, where preparations are underway to elect a new pope.
And later, clack to the future. CBS's Itai Hodge shows us how the old typewriter is finding new love in the digital age.
I don't think they're going anywhere. I think they're back to stay.
This is the CBS Weekend News from New York with Jerika Duncan.
Good evening, and thank you for joining.
Africa News. The news.
On the Italian island of Lampedusa, a quiet cemetery holds the final resting place of those who never made it across the Mediterranean. Volunteers tend to the graves of migrants, some named,
many unknown, offering dignity in death to people who lost their lives searching for safety and hope. We have never seen or met these people. None of them have given us their name or their story. We don't know anything, but they are still human beings, not spare.
Australia's centre-left Labour Party has secured a second term in office in a landslide election victory. Issues.
Zimbabwe's Vice President Constantino Chiwenga met with the Vatican's Foreign Minister Archbishop Paul Richard Gallagher in Rome on Saturday. The two discussed Zimbabwe's political and socio-economic challenges, as well as ways to strengthen cooperation with the Catholic Church, particularly in education and healthcare. According to the Vatican, the meeting also touched on regional and global issues, with both sides emphasizing the importance of dialogue and reconciliation between communities. In the heart of Kibera, one of Africa's largest informal settlements, a centuries-old Afro-Brazilian martial art is transforming lives. Capoeira, once outlawed in Brazil, is finding purpose among Kenyan youth, blending rhythm, resistance and resilience.
The roots of capoeira come from Angola and Congo, and it was established by the enslaved Africans who were brought from that region, Central West Africa, to Brazil. And it was a form of resistance of using martial forms that are from Africa as a form of resistance to the institution of slavery and the oppression that these different ethnic groups experience.
Mestre Salim, as he's known, opened the Capoeira Angola Center in Kibera to reconnect young people with African heritage and to offer discipline, joy and refuge.
From the community I come from, there's a lot.
Thank you very much for giving time to Amir Shackle 5858. I am Amir Shackle. Have a good life. Bye-bye.